The restroom is straight out this way through the second set of doors to the right. We'd appreciate it if you would turn your cell phone off too or on vibrate. That would be great. My name is Vicki Clark. I'm the CEO of Ravenwood Mental Health Center. This event came together when Mike Farrell, who's a Clarendon Township trustee, went to an event, he might mention that, and saw Agent Hill speak. And came back. He was so impressed and so moved that he said, we need to bring this to Geauga County. So he called, I believe, Kim Leininger at United Way, who put him in touch with me. And we've also had the Geauga Mental Health and Recovery Board involved. Between the three agencies have put this event together. I think this afternoon we had between 85 and 90 people attend the professional event. So it was incredibly exciting. And this is a great turnout, too. So thank you for coming. I also want to mention the Sheriff's Department is here, and they brought a couple vessels that you can dispose of any unwanted prescription drugs. And if you did not bring them tonight and have things you want to get rid of, they have that ability. They have a bin in their lobby that is accessible to you at all times that you can go drop off your unwanted prescription drugs. And after you hear Agent Hill talk, you'll probably be cleaning out your bathroom cabinets. Okay, I would like to introduce Mike Farrell, and he's going to introduce Agent Hill. Thank you. Oh, I just want to say thank you to Sisters of Notre Dame for letting us use this facility. It's beautiful.
And I want to thank Vicki and Kim Leininger and Beth Matthews and even leaving anyone out, but we put this on. It's just been a great honor to do. We have Special Agent Robert Hill here. I just want to let you know a little bit. He was a guest speaker on ABC News with Diane Sawyer and NBC with Brian Williams. He assisted lead in DEA headquarters team of approximately 300 and runs a budget of $325 million. And number two man, I guess I'm the chain there. And he's just a great dynamic guy. He'll answer questions for you, and I'm proud to say he's in there fighting the fight, even in the, no matter who's around him, the justices in Washington, D.C., he still says it like it is. And that gives me faith in America. And you're going to have a great learning some things tonight, and I hope you enjoy it, and ask some questions as you go, especially as you're not doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. How you doing?
Good afternoon.
What we're going to talk about is prescription drug abuse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about it in a national environment, what we're seeing. Also some things that will help you as parents, co-workers, and just as U.S. stakeholders being U.S. citizens as a whole. Prescription drug abuse. What is prescription drug abuse? Straightforward. Prescription drug abuse is the use of prescription drugs, whether they're controlled or non-controlled, not in the manner in which they were prescribed. Straightforward. Nothing elaborate about it, real simple. So what are we also going to learn tonight? What we're going to talk about is the overall problem of the prescription drug abuse problem, discuss some methods of pharmaceutical diversion, law enforcement efforts, and a few red flags as citizens to be aware of that maybe this could be a problem. I have nothing of financial relationship to disclose. So, DEA in general. What is DEA? We're a single mission agency. We fall under the Department of Justice. Our mission is to go after those individuals and organizations that are involved in the illicit distribution of controlled substances, as well as doing our non-enforcement programs, speaking events, making the public aware of the ills of drug abuse, and DARE programs, which are now demand reduction, which this week is happening to be Red Ribbon Week, from October 23rd till October 31st. And that's one of the big programs we do for a drug-free America, because it goes over and represents one of our agents that was killed back in Mexico back in 1986, Kiki Camarena. The Office of Diversion Control. That's where I currently fall under the Office of Diversion Control. Our mission within the Office of Diversion Control is to go after those individuals and organizations that are involved in the illicit distribution of controlled pharmaceuticals as well as illicit chemicals, while ensuring that there's an adequate, uninterrupted supply for commercial, scientific, and medical needs. This right here shows you DEA registrant, our registrant community. For any person or business organization to handle controlled substances legally, you have to have a DEA registration. And if you have a DEA registration, you're legally authorized to handle controlled substances. Right here shows you our registrant community as of yesterday. As you see throughout the United States, we have over 1.56 million DEA registrants. The number in yellow shows you the number that you have out of that 1.56 million that's currently in the state of Ohio. Our largest area of our registrant community is the practitioners or doctors. As you see there, we have 1.19 million registrants that are practitioners. You see your number in yellow, what you have in the state of Ohio. Pharmacies have over 70,000 plus in the United States. You see your number, what you have in the state of Ohio. And hospitals and clinics, you see you have just over 16,000. And also what you have here in the state of Ohio. And the reason I put that up so you can see how your state falls into the whole overall community. So let's talk about the most commonly abused medications out there, prescription medications. They fall under three categories. They're either going to be an opioid, a benzodiazepine, or an amphetamine-like type drug to address ADHD. The drugs that we're seeing, our drugs of concern, fall under those three categories. And also, if there's any questions that you guys have, feel free to stop me so that way we can answer the question. I don't have any problem with that. IMS Health. IMS Health, they track all the prescriptions that are written in the United States. This is the most current information that they've released. This information came out in February of 2013. We're waiting on them to put out 13 numbers. They always come out a year behind. But if you look at it, in 2012, there was over 4 billion prescriptions that were written in the United States. And the most prescribed drug was hydrocodone in a combination, which is the hydrocodone combination products. We're also going to talk about other drugs that were on there, like tramadol, oxycodone, alprazolam. And you're going to see how all this comes together. But remember, keep that number in mind. 4,000 prescriptions written in 2012. So in February of this year, IMS put out a partial study on the prescriptions. They haven't put out all of 2013 yet, but they put out partial. And it was only to address the opioids, one of the three concerns that we have. And what they shown was between 2012 and 2013, we had a 5% drop. We went from 240 million prescriptions down to 230 million prescriptions. However, if you look at the whole time frame between 2008 and 2013, the number of prescriptions for opioids increased by 14%. So, right here, where are painkiller prescriptions the highest in written? So this study just came out in July of this year, and it shows by state rankings how many prescriptions are written per 100 persons. And as you see the top 3 states, and you see the number of prescriptions that were written, Alabama, Tennessee, and West Virginia. And you see their numbers. For every 100 persons, look how many prescriptions they wrote. Well over 100. Here in Ohio, you guys are dead even with the average, 100 for 100. But Hawaii is the lowest. When you look at this, you can use this as an indicator of what type of problems are going to occur in your state, or if you're teetering on problems, because you can see where these opioids are being written. So, the prescription drug abuse epidemic, how did we get to this point? We got to this point because of the perfect storm. And in this perfect storm, you look at some of the factors that tie it all together. First of all, you have the pharmaceutical industry pushing their products on practitioners. Remember the number I showed you up there, the 1.199 million practitioners we have in the U.S.? So we have pharmaceutical companies that are pushing their products on them, trying to make sure they get them out there in the market. You also have direct-to-consumer advertising. The United States is only one of two countries in the world where you can directly advertise prescription medications directly to the consumer. The next issue, Medicaid and Medicare. Paying for these prescriptions. We, and when I say we, I mean all of us as citizens of the United States, in 2013, Medicaid and Medicare paid $66 billion for prescriptions. Out of that $66 billion, $1 billion was just for oxycodone prescriptions. Yes. The next one, we're in the information age. What do we all do now for something we want to find out and we're not sure? We just go on the computer and we Google it. And we look it up. It's also instantaneously, so it gets to us quicker. And the last thing is, right now in society, we have a belief that a pill will solve all of our ailments. And when you put all of that together, that helps with the perfect storm, along with other factors. And to give you an idea, the Mayo Clinic. Everybody knows what the Mayo Clinic stands for. We know their reputation. They did a study that they released last year, and it's shown that 70% of all Americans are taking at least one type of a prescription drug. And out of that 70%, 50% are taking at least two types of a prescription drug. And the drugs that we're taking, as you see, antibiotics, antidepressants, and the opioid pain relievers. That's all helping this perfect storm. Another thing that's helping the perfect storm. Back in the mid-90s, 94, 95, 96, there was a real big push that when you went to the doctor, and we call it the fifth new vital sign. You go to the doctor, what do they always ask you? What's your blood pressure? What's your temperature? What's your heart rate? What's your breathing? They also would ask you if or how much pain were you in. And then when they would ask you that, what would they tell you? Give me a number from 1 to 10. And if you were in so much pain that you couldn't talk, they'd tell you to point at these smiley faces and frowns up on the wall to determine how much pain you were in. Well, you bring all that together, perfect storm. So let's look at some quick facts. Prescription drug abuse is the granddaddy of all drug abuse. It has always been around. It is also the fastest growing drug problem here in the United States, and it's been labeled a national epidemic. It hasn't been labeled an epidemic by DEA or law enforcement. It was labeled an epidemic by the CDC. And when you look at deaths, the most current information that we have out there is the deaths from 2011. These numbers were just released July of this year. Because with the death numbers, they always come out 3 years after the year. So 2011 is the most current information. However, on October 15th, the White House through ONDCP released the new numbers only on opioids, and that was it. They didn't release the whole study. So you have the most current numbers. 11 is what everybody's working off of. 12 is you just have partial numbers. So if you look at that, 2011, 41,000 plus died from an unintentional drug overdose death. That is all drugs combined. That has been an increase for 12 consecutive years, and when you break it down, That is one person dying every 12 minutes and 45 seconds. When you break it down even further, and you look at the prescription drugs, you see there's 22,000 plus. When you break that number down, that's one person dying every 23 minutes. And then when you break it down even further to the opioid painkillers, with the 16,917 deaths, that's one person dying every 31 minutes and 5 seconds. Think about that. That's how much people are dying from this. And when you look at these numbers, you have more people dying from cocaine and heroin that are less than that than what has died from the prescription opioids. So the prescription opioids, you have more people dying from them than cocaine and heroin combined. And so let's think about that. What do we tell our kids as parents? Stay away from cocaine, stay away from heroin, stay away from marijuana, stay away from LSD, stay away from methamphetamine, stay away from MDMA. But that's not what's killing our kids. It's the drugs that are right there in our house. And then if you look at the last bullet, remember how I talked about earlier with the INS information? How we saw 241 million prescriptions that were written in 2012 and then 230 million that were written in 2013. Well, from the numbers from 2012, you could give every American adult a full bottle of pills just by those number of prescriptions that were written. You bring all that together, perfect storm. For those of you that are visual, I put the chart up so you can see it. But what I also put on this chart, if you look at the bottom, to show you the numbers of the deaths that have occurred from cocaine and heroin. And when you look at those numbers for each year, and you look at the numbers for the opiates, you see the opiates are totally bypassing. So that's what you have to look at. And as you see the heroin deaths, just 4,397. But we're over 16,000 for the opioids. So let's talk about deaths. When somebody famous dies, we hear a lot about it. Because the media talks about it. It's in papers. You can't get away from it. But what it does is it gets the message out that this is a problem. However, just because someone is famous, their death is no more than important than the average everyday person. The only thing that's different is because of who they are, there's more information out about it. Famous users and abusers, same thing. Just because someone is famous doesn't make their abuse more important. But it gets the word out because people want to talk about it because that's who they recognize with. And what I put up here with these, a couple. Everybody knows who Steven Tyler is. He did an interview with Matt Lauer a couple of years ago. I thought it was a very good interview. That's why I added his picture up here. And the reason why is because Steven Tyler had a major heroin problem. And he would talk about, I'm Steven Tyler. It's tough for me to go out on the street corner and score heroin. I don't want to be sending people to go get it for me because I don't want anybody knowing my personal information. But right in the middle of the interview, he picked up his cell phone and he said, but you know what? I got 100 doctors in here. And all I have to do is just call any one of them and they'll say, this is Steven. And they'll go, what do you want, Steven? And he's able to feed his addiction. I thought that was pretty good. The other thing is, you got Eminem up there. Whether you like his music or not, you probably have kids or grandkids that are listening to his music. He almost died from a methadone overdose about 5 years ago. But the reason why I also put him up there is because if you look at him, he has Vicodin tattoos on his arms. You look at his album covers, Vicodin tablets. That's the music that kids are listening to. They think it's okay for him, it's okay for them. And the last gentleman I put up here, Jack T. Camp Jr., the reason why I use him is because he was a federal judge in the Northern District of Georgia. And he wound up getting arrested by us DEA. When he got arrested by us, he was trying to purchase oxycodone from one of our undercover agents. He had cocaine in the car. He had guns in the car. He was with a stripper. But we wind up arresting him. He subsequently wind up resigning his judgeship and then subsequently being sentenced to 6 months in jail. So that goes to show it doesn't matter who you are. This affects people from all walks of life. It doesn't matter what sex you are, what race you are, whether you live in the city, whether you live in the suburbs, whether you have an education, whether you don't have an education, what your socioeconomic status is. This is affecting people from all walks of life. And here are articles. How we talked about when there's famous people are dying or they're famous abusers. The news media jumps on top of it, and you see articles everywhere where they talk about it. And it gets the word out, but sometimes it gets the wrong word out. That only if you're somebody that it's important. And that's not true, because everybody is somebody. So let's talk about some national abuse facts. This study just came out from SAMHSA September of this year. Most current information out there. So when you look at it, these abuse facts, look at the numbers. 2013, you look at that, 24.6 million Americans aged 12 or older admitted to illegal drug use within the past month. So let's think about that, first of all. 12 years old, 7th graders. So that's a problem right there, because that's our next generation. Our future leaders, and they're already getting involved in destructive behavior. Now, I don't know what most 7th graders think about, but the last thing they should be thinking about is getting initiated into drug use. You look at the next number, out of that number, the 6.5 abusing the psychotherapeutics. And if you look at it, that number's been kind of fluctuating back and forth, and that's why I put the 2 previous years on there. Because if you look at 2012, the number was 6.8. If you look at the previous year, 2011, it was 6.1. So you see we had a decrease. Because if you look at that, you're going, it's an increase and then a decrease. But what I don't put up there is the 2010 numbers where we had 7 million people. Then it dropped down to 6.1. Then it went back up to 6.8. Then it dropped down to 6.5. So it's kind of going like this. Also, you look at initiates with the psychotherapeutics for 2013. You see we had over 1.5 million. Again, look at the age. 12 years old. And you see what that breaks down to? Just a little over 4,000 a day that I get here, initiation into drugs using psychotherapeutics. And last, the psychotherapeutics for the abuse is second only to marijuana. That's the problem that we're having right now in society. For those of you that are visual, there's the map up there to show you in the bar graph where you can see it. And then again, if you look at it, the drugs we tell our kids to stay away from, the cocaine, the heroin, the hallucinogens, the inhalants, they're down at the bottom. Second only to marijuana, psychotherapeutics. Also, when you look at the initiation, it shows you on the bar graph here on the pie chart, you see the main initiants for drug use is marijuana. Second, the pain relievers, psychotherapeutics. Another graph up here to show you where are they getting these drugs from. Or we know that there has to be a healthcare professional or a drug trafficking organization that's just slinging them out on the street. But what happens is, once someone gets these drugs, then how are they getting them? And if you look up there, it's telling you how they're getting them. We like to say in law enforcement, it's real easy. The 3 F's, family and friends for free. That's where they're getting them. And if you look at the chart, it shows that. They're not getting them from the internet, where you see all this hoopla out there talking about, oh, you can purchase drugs on the internet. You can purchase drugs on the internet, but first of all, they're probably going to be a non-controlled drug, and it's not going to be something you're looking for. And we've also did tons of undercover buys on the internet because we were going with all these studies that were coming out. And you know what was happening every time we purchased drugs from the internet? Tell you what was happening? They stole our money. They took our money and never sent us anything. They're robbers. You know what? Because you can hide behind your computer. That's what's going on the internet. So here's the study to show you the compared 2 years from 12 and 13. And as you see, when you look at the numbers, you will see a total increase across the board for our drug use here in the United States. The only number that really didn't increase is heroin, and I'm going to tell you, I think that's a false positive, even though I have nothing to back it up but my experience being out on the street, because heroin is a dark drug and most people don't want to admit they're using it. So most people are not going to admit, oh, I'm a heroin user. They're not going to do it. But if you look at the other drugs, where people think it's acceptable, you notice there's been an increase, and a steady increase. So let's talk about teens and their attitudes. The reason why we have to address teens and their attitudes is because they're our future leaders. They are the future leaders, the next generation. They're going to be running our country. And if their attitudes show what their attitudes are, we have to change their attitudes. And the biggest one up here, when you look at it, is you look at that third bullet. And that's a shame. Because that third bullet says 22% say that their parents don't care as much if they're caught using a prescription drug than if they're using an illicit drug. Now really, because you know what? Think about it. As parents, if nothing else with our kids, they should be afraid of us. They should be able to be afraid and say, I'm not going to get involved with this because I don't want to get my parents upset. But they don't think that way. They're figuring their parents don't care. And that's sad because every kid looks up to their parent. It doesn't matter who their parent is or what their parent does. To every kid, their parents are Superman or Superwoman. So that's really bad. So, how many of you guys here in the audience have heard of heroin? Good. Ravenwood is one of the websites that our kids and young adults are going to find out anything they need to know about drug use and abuse. If you go on this site, you will see live interactions. I took this drug at 10 o'clock. At 10:15, I didn't really feel nothing. So I took 2 more, and at 10:45, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Because this is how I felt. This is what the reaction was. It is a great website for intelligence. And if you're a parent or a grandparent, you need to know about this site. And if you go on the site, you're not going to get a virus. It's not some underground site. They will hit you up for a donation. That they'll do. But this is a good site. Another site? How many of you guys have heard of Blue Light? No hands? Okay.
Man, I know nothing.
Blue Light is another one. If you look at this one, when I first learned about it, I took a snapshot of it straight from my phone. Because, you know, some of these sites, they're up 1 minute and they're down the next minute. But look at this site. On the first page you go on, they're not even hiding what they're talking about. Drug frequently asked questions. Whatever drug you want to talk about in the discussion. Drug studies. Drugs in the media. You know, basic drug discussions if you're a new guy at drugs. Or advanced drug discussions if you've like been in it for a while. You know, this is the stuff that our kids are going to. Another site, Opium Pile. This site was better than heroin. This site was really good. It talked about anything you wanted to talk about, and even what they had is when you logged on the site, they had like a spinning wheel right here, so that was always looping. So whatever drug you wanted to go to, all you had to do was click on that, and it'll take you right to it. You didn't even have to think when you were doing it. But this website you have to pay to be a member of. And as you see from my snapshot, they were telling me it was time for my quarterly dues or they were going to cut me off. But this is where our kids are going to get information. Remember we talked about that perfect storm and we're in the information age? You can do it all sitting at home. So let's talk about some sources of concerns. You look at all these problems that were going on, but there's, all of it is a source of concern, but there's major sources of concerns within our concerns. And if you look at it, this is the biggest thing. You look at some of the parents. They believe that using a prescription drug to get high is safer than using a street drug. Really? So, we're passing that views on to our teens by the way we're thinking as parents. You look at the other. 1 in 8 parents indicate that it's okay for their teen to take a prescription drug without a prescription. First of all, that's illegal. And second of all, we're facilitating that perfect storm. Belief that a pill will solve all our ailments. And then you see the last one. 9% of the parents believe that it's okay to take a prescription drug without a prescription if it's for reducing pain. Again, first of all, it's illegal. Second of all, facilitating that perfect storm. So let's talk about another source of concern. Besides this epidemic that we have with prescription drugs, we have a sub-epidemic. And the reason why we have a sub-epidemic is because as a society as a whole, we all have a bias when it comes to drug use. You know what that bias is? It's all the same for all of us. You never think of women being involved in that type of behavior. Whenever you think of drug use and abuse, you automatically think of the male gender. It's just the way we all been brought up. But the problem we got is women are also dying from this problem. And if you look at it in the last decade, you had over 48,000 women die. And you look at the numbers, that's 1 death or 18 deaths every day. And then when you look at it, for every one lady that dies, you got 30 of them going to the emergency room. Think of the burden that this is causing. And they were forgotten because most people don't think of women when you think of this problem. Yes?
Do you think those numbers are higher? Because I know we've listened to some of our county officials speak about it, and they said, like, a lot of times when you go to the hospital, they don't report it as a drug overdose when it's like they had a heart attack, but it was caused by a drug. So do you think those numbers...
No, because what they did when they took this study, if you had drugs in your system that were above what you should have had in your system, that were, obviously they weren't toxic because you're not dead, but it was more than the therapeutic value.
Right.
That's what they pulled this from. Yes.
They should drink more.
Yeah, they diluted it. We heard that too. I don't know if you guys heard what she said, but we hear, if you drink water when you're taking these drugs, it'll dilute it. Yeah, we hear that too.
I wasn't speaking of water.
Oh.
I was speaking of scotch, maybe, instead of a pill.
Well,
A glass of wine.
Different kind of drug.
so let's talk about some of the drugs of concerns. And the drugs that I have listed up here are the drugs of concerns that we're seeing that are becoming major problems. And if you look at these drugs up here, these drugs fall into one of the 3 categories that I had talked to you about earlier when we separated the most commonly abused medications. Hydrocodone, it used to be a Schedule 3 drug. And I'm going to talk to you about schedules if you don't know about schedules. But as of October the 6th of this year, it's been rescheduled to a Schedule 2. And for those of you that don't know, drugs are based in schedule classes. And it goes from Schedule 1 to Schedule 5. So what happens is, if a drug is a Schedule 1, it has no acceptable medical use within the United States, but it has a high potential for abuse. If a drug is a Schedule 2 to a Schedule 5, it has acceptable medical use in the United States, But the potential for abuse is higher, starting at 2, then it goes down to 3, then 4, then 5. All of them have a potential for abuse, but 2 is the highest, 2 has the most restrictions, and it goes down from there. So, to give you guys a quick quiz, see if you're paying attention. What schedule is marijuana? Good job. Schedule 1. No acceptable medical use in the United States. So then you're going to say, well, what about all these states that's got municipal marijuana, right? Here's what I will tell you. Under federal law, marijuana is a Schedule 1. No acceptable medical use within the United States. Under the Supremacy Clause, federal law is the law of the land if there's a conflict in laws, right? So when you get these states that decide that they're going to pass a law through referendum and not through a scientific evaluation, and we're just going to vote that this drug should be for medical use, doesn't fly. And what's happening is, even though these people are voting for it, they're in conflict with federal law, and we still enforce federal law. And second of all, I think the citizens have been sold snake oil. Because what you're going to wind up having in the future, to try and reap tax revenues, we're going to wind up spending billions of dollars covering healthcare issues. Yes?
I thought that there was something documentable about the use of it for people with cancer and the pain associated with their chemo and that.
No, because here's why I'm going to tell you.
Tell me, because I can't.
Remember, first of all, marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug.
Yeah.
No acceptable medical use in the United States.
Right.
Whether we like it or not, FDA is the competent U.S. authority to determine.
Competent's a big word.
Right, you're exactly right. Competent, we may not like it or not, but we have to go by it. That's the law of the land. FDA determines if a drug has therapeutic value and if it should be introduced into the market. And FDA has not done anything to say that marijuana should fall within Schedule 2 through 5. It's still a Schedule 1. So all these states are doing is just voting it in. See? And that's what the confusion is.
Yes.
Because people think, oh no, it's municipal marijuana. No, it's not. Because it's still a Schedule 1 drug. No, there's nothing behind it. Nothing behind it but snake oil. People are just...
expensive oil.
Exactly. It's going to be very expensive.
Lucrative business.
Well, you know what? And that's the problem. People are doing it to generate money. With the money that they're going to generate, you'll see 4 or 5 years from now, it's going to be 1,000 times more paying for health care issues. And that's the problem. So, we have these drugs up here that are drugs of concerns. We just rescheduled hydrocodone. Hydrocodone in its powder form, it was always a Schedule 2. In combination products, it was a Schedule 3. It was just upscheduled. Tramadol, we just upscheduled tramadol. It used to be a non-control in the federal system. We made it a control because that was one of the drugs that were being abused a lot. And with these drugs of concerns, what happens is these drug seekers, they want these drugs so that they can have them in a cocktail form. Because that enhances what they're doing. So, hydrocodone, most prescribed drug in the United States. Depending on what region you're in, and the prices that I have up here are black market prices on the street. Depending on what region you is, there's a demand going for anywhere from $2 to $10. However, that's going to change because hydrocodone now is a Schedule 2. Schedule 2 garners more money out on the street, and right now we're about 22 days into figuring out what the average price is going to be of what's going on out there. So we're still garnering intel from all our undercover buys and everything like that to see how much it's going to go up. But the problem is, for the combination products, they're going to be out there for some users, but for other users, they're not going to be wanted because they're going to want so hydro. Zohydro, introduced October 25th of last year when FDA said that it had therapeutic value and it could hit the market. Currently with hydrocodone and the combination products, the largest you can get it in is a 10 milligram dose. With Zohydro, this is going to be pure, and you can get it in a 50 milligram capsule. This is what the drug seekers are going to want. It's going to become the new Oxycontin on the street. Because in the older days, Oxycontin was the king of the street. That's what the drug seekers wanted. They wanted to get their hands on Oxycontin, and that's what their drug of choice. Well, then the 80 milligrams is what they wanted. What wound up happening is, in August of 2010, Purdue Pharma wound up reformulating Oxycontin, and they made it tamper resistant. Now, just because a drug is tamper resistant doesn't make it abuse resistant. Because right now in America, everybody just figures, well, if you just make these drugs more tamper resistant, we will have no abuse problems. Well, that's completely wrong. Because you got to remember, all these drugs were meant to be taken orally. So what do? If it says take 1 every 12 hours and you decide to take 4 every 12 hours, you're still abusing the drug. It doesn't matter if it's tamper resistant or not. So that's what we're trying to right now make sure that society understands, that tamper resistant is not the answer. It helps with the solution, but it's not the answer. So, now that Zohydro has been introduced to the market, it's in a capsule form, so it's not tamper resistant, and it's pure. Basically, 5 times more pure than what you would used to get in a combination product. So this drug is going to wreak havoc in communities. It's going to be just like Oxycontin. There's going to be major overdose deaths, major emergency room admissions, quality of life issues, B&Es, robberies, just everything that came along with Oxycontin. You got to see it with this drug. And it's out there. It's been on the market since March of this year. The biggest thing to be concerned with, the 50 milligram capsules, all brown. Those capsules are all brown. If you want the 40 milligram, because they come in 10 intervals. And the 40 milligram is going to be white with the brown capsule.
What do people take these for? That's what.
Well, they take them to treat pain because there is a therapeutic value. However, the problem you have is when people start abusing them. Because what they started doing is they started taking these drugs in place of other drugs. So when you're taking these painkillers and you want them in a cocktail form, which we're going to talk about. So what they will do is they will take, if it's a Trinity or a Holy Trinity, is what they call them out on the street. When it's a Trinity, it's using a hydrocodone with a Xanax and a Soma. Well, what wind up happening is we wind up controlling Soma back in January of 2012. So what these drug seekers immediately did, they substituted the Soma for Plexerol, which is a non-controllable substance. And what you do is when you take all 3 of them, it inhibits the high. But here's what I'm here to tell you.
Is that what they take it for? And I'm naive to this.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But is that what they take? I mean, these are paints, so they take it to get high? I mean,
yes, they're taking it to get high, like a normal illicit street high. They're not taking it for the therapeutic value that they're supposed to be taking it for.
And I guess I'm trying to be specific because is a high like somebody who drinks too much and they're kind of...
Well, since I've never done drugs, I don't know.
No, I know what you're saying. I mean, that's what I'm trying to fathom. What does it do for them?
It's almost like a heroin high. So what it does is they take it and it kind of depresses the respiratory system. And it gives them this euphoric feeling where it keeps them more in a nodding off effect, and it just gives them this real relaxed, warm feeling. And that's what they're doing.
Now on TV when they show some of these
zombies?
No, not the zombie, but they, like they get like their Superman, Now what is that those kids are taking?
They are taking either a stimulant, which is either cocaine, methamphetamine, or they're taking some synthetic drugs, which I'm going to talk to you about, like the bath salts.
You don't have to
K2
get too
spices.
detailed. Do it for the rest of them. I'm putting my head back under a rock.
No, that's good you're asking these questions. Because if you're thinking about it, probably other people are thinking about it. And I'm here to answer whatever questions you want.
It's amazing.
So, to get it also in the Holy Trinity, what they would do is they would take a Schedule 2 opioid. And it would be roxicodone, Oxycontin, then Opana, and now it would be Zohydro.
All at once.
No, that would be the opiate that they would pick.
Oh.
And then they would still have it with Xanax and Soma or Flexerol. And then you would take that. The Trinity, when you use hydrocodone, it gives them a euphoric feeling. When they do it in the Holy Trinity, it gives them a super euphoric feeling because you're using a stronger drug. And then what they would also do is, if they couldn't get their opiate of choice, they would substitute it with Tramadol, which at the time was a non-control, and that's why we at DEA, we controlled it August of this year, because we realized that was a drug being used to facilitate the abuse. But the one thing about these drugs and these combinations, first of all, there is no therapeutic reason for those drugs to ever be written in that combination, whether it's the Trinity or the Holy Trinity. So right off the bat, if you see that's being done or somebody's being prescribed that, you know something illegal is going on, because there is no therapeutic reason for those three drugs to ever be given to anybody, except for illicit drug use.
And are there a lot of doctors that write those?
Oh yes. And I'm going to talk to you guys about some stuff and show you something. You're exactly right. Because there's tons of money in it. You are exactly right. Because one of the cases we did, and I didn't put it in this presentation, but we did an operation where a guy down in Florida was running these pain clinics, and you would see some of all the things that were going on. Yes. And these people were making tens of millions of dollars. That what they were making from this. And they are, because they think they're smarter than everybody, they think they're not drug dealers, but they are. So they don't hide their assets or they don't do anything. It's very easy to target them because they think they can just do it right out front. Oxycontin. Going on the street, when it was the king of the street, anywhere from about $100, $140, $150, $160, depending on what region you were in. The 80 milligram was the drug seeker's Oxycontin of choice, but now it's been reformulated. It was reformulated back in August of 2010. So the drug seekers really didn't like it as much, so they had transitioned to Opana, which is an oxymorphone. And Opana was the new king of the street. It was more euphoric, the high was more intense, and it lasted longer. So that's where the drug seekers were going. Now we're going to see they're going to be transitioning over to Zohydro. So how do you abuse a lot of these drugs? Besides taking them in the cocktail and you're taking them orally, a lot that you'll see with the oxycodone abuse is you'll see them breaking it up, crushing it. They'll either snort it or they'll burn it. And they like to burn it because the high is more intense and it goes to the brain quicker. So one of the things why we put this up here is to show you, if you see someone that's walking around with tinfoil and it's got those black streaks in them, they're smoking Oxycontin or oxycodone. And for some reason, when we arrest these people, they never want to throw away that foil. They'll use it, when they're done, fold it back up and it's in their pocket.
Do you?
Go ahead.
Do you really? I'm trying to look at my friends, and I don't see any of them with foil in the pocket. But I mean, truthfully, I mean, is there a denominator that also fits this, or is this just crosses all lines?
That's the problem. Here's the problem, and you said a key word. is their denominator. That's an old way of thinking.
Well, I'm older.
No, I understand. But society as a whole, that's an old way of thinking. And that's why we get out and we educate. Because the problem you have is people are still caught up in the ways that, oh, it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to anybody that I know. We live in this community, we work at this job, we have this amount of money. If you notice when I started this, what did I say? This affects people from all walks of life. You can't just look at someone and say, this person will never do that. This person will never do that.
But don't you think, though, that the structure of society, with more people working, less control generally in many people's homes, and a more closed-eye mentality to some of the activities in their home. Personally, if I'd have pulled some of this crap when I was a kid, and I'm not afraid, my parents are both dead, so they can come back and help me. I mean, if I did something, my father would have, he had a belt, and you lived in, I mean, you behaved, you had this respect.
That's right.
And there is not that element in many homes today. And not all of them, but I mean, in many, it is totally lacking.
I'll even go a little further, so it's starting to be the whole thought process of society as a whole. Nobody wants anybody telling them what to do. You go get a 2-year-old kid, they don't want you telling them what to do. It's just the culture that we live in and the society that we live in. And the problem is, we have to do something about it. Because this is why we're at an epidemic like we are now, and people are dying. And you know what's the sad part about this? Here's what the sad part is. You look at those deaths, whether you talk about the 41,000 of the unintentional drug overdose deaths, or you talk about the 16,917 from the opioid deaths. People in society right now have a problem is, it's not my problem until it's my problem. And we got to stop that. Because when those people are dying, and these people are dying, that's somebody's loved one. But we as a society, we happen to have this thought process that until it's someone I care about, I can care less what's going on over here. And then, when what's going on over here happens over here, and it affects me personally, now I want to find out about it, now I want to do something about it. You got to be proactive and do something about it. And you hit the key word when you said a blind eye. That was the key word. Because a lot of us in society, first of all, don't want to believe this is going on. And then second of all, well, it's not affecting me, so I don't care that this is going on.
Well, when you look at some of these things, and I'm saying this at this point in my life, when I look at many people, they're so busy, and maybe financially they have a situation, but I was a single mother, and my kids were my daughter was a senior in high school, and I still had a neighbor come over to the house after school because my house, I wasn't there.
Right.
I knew that while they told me they wouldn't do anything, that
Difference.
it was the perfect setup for others to come into. And there's a misplaced trust. I personally see it with some people I know with their children, because I know more about what their kids are into, and I think, how do you tell someone?
Well, here's the problem. Here's what you got to look at. Sometimes doing the right thing is hard, right? But here's the thing. Isn't it a lot easier to tell that parent your kid is involved with this than to go tell that parent that your kid is down at the morgue?
I'm hearing you, but I'm
right. But that's what we have to do with society as a whole. Because you have to get involved, and if something's not right, sometimes we know it's tough. But if I'm a parent, or if you ask any parent, I'm sure they would say, maybe as embarrassing as it is, as much as it would hurt, I'd rather for you to come tell me that my kid is doing something wrong than for you to come tell me, go down and identify your kid at the morgue. Yes, sir.
So here we had an incident at our church in elementary school, and our Boy Scout troop. And so here they brought in kids into our troop that were doing drugs, 6, 7th graders, and they knew it. They were so desperate to build the troop back, they let the kids stay, leaving the kids using the drugs with our children. When I confronted them, they cornered me in the basement of the church and threatened.
Who, the kids or the parents?
The parents. And so I told them I had been involved on a U.S. drug study, and I had witnessed all the death and destruction in families growing up. And here are good families, good kids being misled. And so right now, we bring all this to the attention of our priests and other parents and our troop leaders. Here we have medical people, doctors and nurses in our church, in our school, who are using drugs, and they say we use street drugs responsibly. What is your problem?
There you go. You're exactly right.
And this is what we're faced with. And so here I just had parents, and these are good people. These are leaders in our community, and they're using drugs, and they are using them and talking about them in front of our kids, saying it's all right.
And that's the problem, because, like I said earlier, think about this. Every kid looks up to their parent.
Right.
It doesn't matter who your parent is.
And then the other part is, we had, and I found this through, I did an early care and education research project, and I did a drug addiction study for the United States Public Health Service. And then the other early care and education. So I was in every single school in northeastern Ohio. And so here, in our own elementary school and others, here were guidance counselors and teachers with the best intentions coercing parents to sign off to have their kids put on psychotropic drugs when they didn't need them.
That's right. And I'm going to talk about that.
That's a big push, yeah.
It goes back again to this perfect storm.
Right.
Everybody feels that right now in a society, we got this belief that a pill will solve all our ailments, as well as a pill will give us instant gratification to get to where we want to get. And that's why society has to be educated about this problem. Because abusing prescription drugs is no different than abusing illicit street drugs. You can go over these drugs right here, and you can see what the counter drug is on the street. If you're abusing the opioids, you might as well be abusing heroin. If you're abusing ADHD drugs, you might as well be abusing methamphetamine. And it goes down the line. And that's what people don't realize. There's no such thing as safe drug use.
So here we had an incident 2 years ago, Thanksgiving dinner, and my wife's cousin's husband passes out face first and is played on our table. And so we're all concerned. We can't wake him up. The wife tells us that it's his back pain medications. He's fine. This happens all the time. And my fleeting thought was, God, don't die. You're at our table.
That's right.
And so here, everybody got up, and they were around the house. He sat there at the table, sleeping. And it was 2 hours later, we woke him up. And I escorted him to the car. 20 minutes later, a phone call, he's dead.
Oh.
And this is appropriately prescribed pain medication for back pain that he's had for years.
Well,
and here's a doctor not addressing any other modality except to be prescribed the drug.
that's right. Because he should be addressing, first of all, he should be using the prescription drug monitoring program. To find out if he's seeing other doctors that he's not aware of, that he's also being prescribed things that he doesn't know about. The other thing you also have to look at is people can't think, because these drugs are prescribed by a doctor, that they're okay and they're safe. So I can take as many as I want. I don't have to follow what the prescribed use is. So if I'm taking a depressant that's going to shut down my respiratory system, especially like these painkillers do, that I shouldn't be out drinking. I shouldn't be, so it goes with everything. But the one thing that you said there that really is concerning is, first of all, when you say he's got a back problem and he's been taking these pills for years, he should not be on, nobody should be on these opioids for more than 6 months. And I hear this all the time. Oh, well, I got chronic back pain and I've been taking these for 10 years. Well, you're not a chronic back pain, you're a chronic addict. Because that's all it is. And any real pain doctor will tell you, you should not be on opioids at a long period of time. Because if you do, it's going to cause problems. And the ultimate problem that it can cause is death. And the other thing is, again, We're back to this perfect storm because everybody wants instant gratification and a pill to solve all their problems. You have a back problem, so what do? I don't want to go to physical therapy for 6 months. That's too much. I just want to go to my doctor and say, hey, prescribe me oxycodone. And we always joke about it at DEA internally, and we say, here's the problem. What do people think? Good pain treatment is oxycodone. Exceptional pain treatment is oxycodone in the cocktail. Really? And that's the whole problem. And I think everybody has to be educated about this. And that's what we got to make sure everybody understands. And what you said is a prime example. We're at this point in society where nobody wants to tell them what to do. Nobody wants you to tell them you don't want their kids there or whatever. Well, you know what? You hate to say it, but sometimes in society you just don't want to, socialize with certain people. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody should be offended by it. It is what it is. One of the things that I tell my son is that 50% of the people you meet are going to like you. 50% of the people you meet are going to hate you. You don't ever have to say a word. It's just when they looked at you, something they liked about you or something they hated about you. So if you don't understand that at a young age, you're going to have a problem in life. Because everybody's not going to like you and everybody's not going to hate you. And that's the problem.
Can I ask you, why did they save the foil? Is it because of the resin?
I think they saved the foil because it's just that before that you just know you always got high from doing it. And you want to just keep it till you get your next hit. And when you open up the foil, you see those lines and the high is already started before you get started.
So it's not recycling like
Maybe to them it's recycling. Maybe to them it's recycling, but to us, as law enforcement, it's good evidence. But no, you're right. So, let's talk about Xanax. Any other questions? I don't care if I don't get through this. If you have questions or you have concerns, I'd rather answer them because I know it's not often that you have someone from DEA standing in front of you. Because usually when we're standing in front of people, we're taking someone that they love or them with us. So,
chronic pain is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to live with. You could almost understand if somebody is legitimately taking something that there's just no other resolve. I mean, is there such thing as no other resolve?
Well, no, because here's why. You have to look at all the external factors that are going on. And a lot of times when you see these people that are saying chronic pain, now I understand there is therapeutic value for these drugs when you're using them the right way. But when I'm talking about the total abuse, because here's what you'll wind up seeing a lot of times. And if I would have known you guys were going to have some of these good questions, I would have put in some of the case stuff that I had earlier to show you. Here's what you'll get sometimes. I got chronic back pain, okay? Not me personally, I'm just saying. My L4 and my L5 is killing me. So, I go to my doctor, my practitioner. Hey doc, my L4 and my L5 is really causing me a problem. Well, maybe you should go to therapy for 6 months. I don't have time to be going to therapy for 6 months. I don't feel like getting up every other day at 6 in the morning, going to go bounce on some ball, going to go run around, going to go do all that. Well, probably too it would help if you lose 100 pounds. Because, that's probably putting stress on your back too. And maybe if you stop smoking and stop drinking, and maybe you go out and exercise a little bit, you don't do nothing but walk around the block instead of walking to the refrigerator to get a beer or something. So when you see all these factors, and what should really happen when you're treating pain, opioids should be the last resort. It shouldn't be the first choice. It should be the last resort. And a lot of times what you're seeing is happening is the first choice because of this perfect storm. Oh, I don't want to work to do anything. I just want to take a pill and go on with my life.
Right, and I understand that, and you're referring to if this person is suffering from chronic pains can do A, B, C, D, E, and F and not have chronic pain before he take. But so is that everybody's case with chronic pain in every way, not just back pain? But
no, it's not everybody's case. But
now I know a man who is just in pain, and they can't do anything for him, but he still doesn't abuse.
Right.
He suffers through the pain. All right, so I respect
Has he
that.
gone off surgery?
I don't know how he does it.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of times people don't want to take other alternatives because a lot of times people just want these drugs because they want to abuse these drugs.
He does surgery. He does surgery, but he will not abuse. He doesn't.
Right.
He's just very careful.
Well, I'm like that myself. I very rarely take any type of medication unless I have to.
But to the detriment of his pain. I mean, the man's in pain. True pain.
Yes.
And he does do everything he gets seen with.
And even when you do that, then obviously you're going to have them on certain therapeutic value, but you're also going to make sure that it's not something completely long-term, it's not something that's going to be detrimental, and that is a therapeutic value. But for 99% of the times, or the majority of the times you see this, it's other external factors that people haven't even addressed before they got to that. Yes, sir.
I'm just going to add to that. So last week we had a lecture here with Dr. Michael Royce from Cleveland Clinic's Wellness Center. And then 2 days later we were with Dr. Mark Hyman, who's the Cleveland Clinic's director of the Center for Functional Medicine. And so what these two doctors, as heads of these big departments, have testified before the U.S. Senate is we have diet and nutritional interventions that reverse chronic and debilitating back pain and diseases, no drugs needed. And none of this is taught to our doctors who are still prescribing the drugs. This came from Dr. Perrin at a CEU class we had for Catholic Charities. And he said the FDA and the physicians are prescribing the drugs, creating the addictions. And when I met with Tom Naskow, who is the head of the Accreditation Council for U.S. residents at Romeo Seminary, we went over all the spices, herbs, and food, preventing and reversing cancer, diabetes, chronic pain, rheumatoid arthritis, everything. And he said it's all real, that him and the physicians of America are powerless, and these are laws that have to be changed in Washington. I said, Dr. Naskow, what kind of laws would prevent you, the doctors of America, from having the best that science has to offer? And so here, the world's best life-saving drugs in surgery and history of mankind, so opiates for emergency trauma, they have a place. And here, the spices, herbs, and food are from God's garden. And
pharmaceuticals have a big lobby, baby.
That's right.
You don't see them doing more than talking about fighting cancer.
So,
it's not cured.
It's all a perfect storm. I have it there, number one.
Yeah. So here our doctors and heads of the hospitals know this. Dr. Perrin knows it. And we have laws in Washington that are facilitating this because pharmaceutical companies and lobbyists have all the money.
Well, yes and no.
Knows how to stop it.
Here's what I would tell you, yes and no. And I know that's not an answer you want to hear, but here's what it is. A doctor, practitioner, they can prescribe or not prescribe whatever they feel in their professional judgment. However, if it's within the confines of the law. So even if you say that there's these laws out there, but if I'm a practitioner, just like right now, you have practitioners out there in the United States that under no circumstances are they going to prescribe Zohydro. We think it's a problem. We think it's too powerful. We are not going to prescribe it. The same thing can be with these doctors. But the first problem with that is the patient has to be willing to not take that prescription.
If it's so powerful, why did they create it?
Because FDA said it had a therapeutic value. And there's one of the things that I didn't show you guys that I did in the early morning session. You guys are good. You should have had the early morning session. One of the things that I showed earlier as part of the perfect storm, it was uncovered last October that during the FDA advisory committees, that it was uncovered that FDA was letting these pharmaceutical companies pay $25,000, $50,000 to sit on advisory committees to determine if drugs have a therapeutic value.
That's like all of Monsanto's people that are, that Obama gave jobs to. Poison yourselves.
So the problem you have is, if you're paying to be somewhere, I guarantee you're going to let me have influence on the outcome. Because you just took my money.
Right.
Didn't say it was right. We don't agree with it. Because we're law enforcement, we're impartial. We just look at the facts and we do what we have to do. But that's one of the things that are out there that's part of also this perfect storm with these pharmaceutical companies. And the problem you have is when you get to a point that you're willing to compromise your integrity, because think about it. If you are the competent U.S. authority that determines if a drug has therapeutic value and if it should be introduced into the marketplace, why should Robert Hill, the manufacturer of this drug that you're looking at, be allowed to pay $50,000 to sit in on your pre-discussion and your pre-deliberative meetings to determine if it's going to be able to hit the market? That's not right. But here's the problem. We can all sit here and complain about it, but you know what? It's our fault too. You know why it's our fault? Because all you got to do is vote those people out of office.
We're trying.
And I understand that that's what but that's the one thing a lot of times I think we forget as citizens. We don't have to sit and take anything. All we got to do is band together and vote. You know what? It is hard work. But here's the problem. Things that are tough don't come easy.
That's right.
Okay. So, Xanax. Oh, go ahead. Question. I'm sorry.
For inoperable spinal situation, that beyond weight loss and physical therapy and stuff, that you're probably aware of, there's implanted anesthetic pump, so the doses are microscopic and they're only into the spinal canal, and not into the bloodstream where a person is getting higher, becoming tolerant of it, or getting overdosed.
He's exactly right. You guys he's talking about the intrathecal pump. Are you a doctor?
No. Oh, that's like
Oh, that's good. No, that's good. And you're exactly right. And you have several companies that are out there that will handle that and that will address that. And see, one of the things is, DEA, we don't dictate the practice of medicine, but we do regulate it. So we're not going to dictate the practice of medicine, but we are going to dictate it if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, is making sure that a prescription is valid. If you're showing a lack of good faith, we are going to address that. But for the everyday practice of medicine, that's what the state medical boards are for. But you're exactly right. That is one of the solutions. You're dead on. Okay, so Xanax, antidepressant, is used in the cocktail. Rapid onset, long duration. Drug is a very hard drug to kick. A lot of times we see a lot of abuse with this besides the cocktail, with Adderall users and abusers, because they needed to bring them down. Back in 2009, let's talk about Adderall real quick. Adderall to treat ADHD. If you're over 14, they'll give you Adderall. If you're under 14, they usually give you Ravenwood. On college campuses, this drug is known as the college crack. Doing finals, midterms, on average, this drug in the black market going anywhere from about $5 to $30. During that time, it's going for as much as $100 a tablet. We also been seeing athletes abuse it. You said, how come so much? We also been seeing athletes abuse it. We became aware of that it was starting to be dabbled in with back in 2009 with professional athletes. We have a relationship with every major sports with their drug policy. And if you notice, since around 2011, a lot of the major sports have started testing, and you've been seeing a lot of athletes get suspended for testing positive for amphetamines. They're not out abusing methamphetamine on the streets. They're abusing alcohol without a prescription. Because they think it'll also help them focus. Another thing with this drug, you're seeing a lot of the kids abuse it. They're thinking even if they don't have ADHD, they can use it as a study aid.
Yeah, but don't the schools kind of push that anymore, that this ADHD, it seems like it's, if they have disruptive kids in the class, or if they're not, I mean, when you're in a class, when I was a kid, not everything that the teacher said struck me as being golden and worthy of note. I know they thought it was, but I don't think everyone shares that, much with many speakers and that. But it seems today that many of the teachers, when they have a classroom situation, that's what they decide, and they suggest to the parents that they have the children treated for it.
I'll show you one even better. Why don't you read the last bullet that I have up there?
Yeah. I read that, but isn't it? But it's suggested to them many times in the academic arena.
Well, it is suggested, but here's the problem. When you already got a third of the parents that have actively admitted that it's okay for their kid to take an ADHD drug even if they don't have it because it'll help them with their studies, that's a problem right there. Mm-hmm. So it's not the school, because if you already got 33% that are predisposed of doing this, it's not hard to convince someone if they're predisposed, because they're already doing it anyway. And that's what the major problem is. Again, the thought process of the parents, the thought process of the teens. And what we're also seeing with this Adderall problem and Ritalin problem is now you're starting to see in the workforce that a lot of people are flunking random drug testing because they're coming back testing positive for amphetamines, and what are they doing? They're taking their kids Adderall or Ritalin because they think it'll help them focus at work. So it's this whole cycle. So let's talk about the costs. And like I said, I don't care if I don't get through this. So if you guys have questions or anything, I just to bring it all together.
I got a question.
Yes?
I read not too long ago that the schools are getting paid $1,000 for every kid that's on Ritalin. You know if that's true?
I wouldn't have any idea if that's true or not, but if they are getting paid that, then that means the pharmaceutical companies are kicking it back to the school board because you figure they're writing the scripts, and that means that, it's getting kicked back. So, but would it surprise me?
No.
And then schools get additional money for children with special needs. When a child is put on it, they can then file that. So the more kids they have, the more money.
Or even better,
Oh my God.
not even with special needs, higher test scores. When you take the state test, the higher your score is. So, the school system my son goes to, the higher the test scores, and we go to a public school, the higher the test scores, the bigger the bonus for the principal.
So it's not just about, the parents. It's the whole system that we have.
Which I call the perfect storm.
It is. It really is. Everybody has a role to play in why this is occurring.
And it's all our fault. Because you know why it's all our fault? I will tell you why. Prescription drug abuse is a homegrown problem. It's not coming in from the borders. It's not coming in from Mexico. It's not coming in from Colombia. It's coming right in our borders. And you know what? Every last one of us has contributed to the problem. DEA, because these people that are doing it, they have a DEA registration. And if they didn't have the DEA registration, they couldn't prescribe, they couldn't dispense, so you can automatically cut the hemorrhaging off before it even starts. Society as a whole, because you have society wants to do what they want to do. They want instant gratification. They don't want to work for it. You have pharmaceutical industries that are pushing their products. You have people that are willing to compromise themselves to make money. So we're all to blame for this. But even though we're all to blame for this, we all can be part of the solution.
In 2008, I was in a car accident, and I went to the emergency room, and they did an x-ray. They didn't see anything. I was in pain immediately.
Of course you were.
Right. Here's your Vicodin. Here's your Vicodin. Now, I've been in holistic health all my life as a massage therapist, so at that time, and having a family that had addiction, and educating myself prior to that, I didn't want to do that, and I didn't. So I found other things. I was the one who went to physical therapy for a very long time. But let me tell you what's hard for the people that I've seen since then. The system's broken in the sense where some people can't not work. And car insurance does not pay for somebody to be off that long. But I was very fortunate, although I ended up on Medicaid and food stamps and I've built my life back. And I've done it naturally, without medication, and occasional relief, because, sometimes you just have to do it.
Right.
Diagnosed with a brain injury as well, which I noticed increased my desire to want to drink alcohol. So, with interventions that I found outside of the medical community, I'm doing really well. But until they kind of embrace, it's like, you're talking about, the whole system is broken. So each one has to do their part.
And it all has to work in a cooperative effort.
Absolutely. But I educated myself about what options were available to me, and I searched out things, and I tried things. And we don't do that. We don't look at the side effects of what a pill is going to do. And I do that with vaccines, too.
That's right.
I looked at the flu vaccine. If y'all want to know, they don't know how it will interact with other vaccines. So you want to take it separately. But, if you choose to do that. So we have to educate ourselves about what it is that we're putting in our bodies.
That's
whether
right.
it's food or water or medication. So I just have to say that.
Well, and with her saying that, let me ask you guys a question real quick. When was the last time somebody here been to the dentist? And they had maybe a tooth extracted or something. Or they had something done. So what usually happens? The dentist will give you what? You have a tooth extraction or something, and they'll give you 30 hydrocodones, right?
Really?
And then what happens? You only take like 1 or 2 of them, and then you're fine, right? So now you got what, another 28 of them just lying around the house, waiting for somebody to go in your medicine cabinet and do some of this stuff that we're talking about. So you're right, it goes back to the whole system. Because, instead of giving a 72-hour supply where you give 3 or 4, I mean, think about it. Nobody goes to the dentist and get a tooth extracted and take all 30.
I've got a whole bottle. My son had his wisdom teeth out, and I was thinking during this thing, I think that's what he has a bottle of.
Right.
And he didn't take any of them because he's like, oh, I'm really not in pain.
Right. So think about
So
it.
I have a whole bottle of these.
So you should be bringing them back there and dispose of for this gentleman
I'll
right
have
here.
to take him to the sheriff's department.
He's right there.
I don't have him with me.
But see, that's part of this whole perfect storm.
He's coming to your
You
house.
know, because of everything that's going on, and insurance companies get involved because they don't want to pay dispensing fees, so they want to dispense 90-day supply when you only need 2 days. So all of this is a problem. You guys got some good questions. You should be here in the morning.
Can I just, I just want to share this. In the 8th grade, my daughter was having problems with school, had for years. And so they suggested we'll get her tested, see the psychiatrist, see if she has ADHD, anything else. Well, she was diagnosed with ADHD, and on top of that, slight dyslexia. But I was so thankful, and I didn't know anything about this stuff. The doctor, the psychiatrist, said to us, because I assumed that she was going to put her on something like Adderall, and she said absolutely not. She said we got in touch with people that taught Olivia how to take notes with ADHD, how to study with ADHD, how to organize her room, her thoughts with ADHD, how to do all this with ADHD. And fast forward, she's in 10th grade, and she's a straight A student, and she's in all honors classes. That's right. With the dyslexia, and she doesn't take any prescription for the ADHD. She was taught how to not overcome it, but how to deal with it, how to adapt to it. And
without appeal.
and I'm very thankful for that doctor, that we went to that doctor, you know.
And that's a good example of what I was talking about, how a doctor determines what they want to prescribe or what they think. But there should always be alternative measures before there's any medication that's given out. Now granted, there are some elements that is the most therapeutic way to adjust and to handle it. But that's what we got to look at. And that's how you break the cycle of this perfect storm. You step outside of what's going on and look for alternative ways that are within reason, that is not going to be detrimental to the patient. Because remember, even though we're talking about illicit use here, when people are prescribed medication, it's supposed to be what's in the best interest of the patient. Not what's in the best interest of the pharmaceutical company, distributor, the doctor, the pharmacist, or everybody that's profiting off of it. It's supposed to be what's in the best interest of the patient.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, as a law enforcement, if you know someone who is like a zombie, who is on prescriptions, with HIPAA laws today, you know, the prescriptions keep coming.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Here's what I would tell you. And this is a misnomer. Under HIPAA laws, there's an exception to the HIPAA laws. And that exception is, if you look at HIPAA, if you can determine that there's criminal activity or a violation of a law, HIPAA laws do not apply. That's how we get around it in law enforcement. Like when the doctor writes a prescription for the Holy Trinity, and we know there's no therapeutic value for it, that's an exception to HIPAA. Most people don't realize that. It's hidden way inside of it, but that's an exception to HIPAA. Any criminal activity or any activity that violates any federal or state laws, that's an exception where HIPAA doesn't apply. Because you got to remember, if it's violating the law, it's no longer valid and acceptable medical practice. So the cost system, real quick. This is what you hear a lot about out on the street, the promethazine with codeine, known on the street as the purple drink, the lean, the scissor. This is what we see a lot of kids also abusing. Got started pretty much down in the Houston, Texas area, in the hip-hop community. You know, Pimp C was the guy that pretty much got it started. He ultimately died from an overdose of it. But, you know, it was New Orleans, Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Los Angeles, California. This is a very popular drug out on the street. Subsequently been pulled off the market as of April of this year. The Prometh that the drug seekers wanted was the Activist brand. Activist just pulled it off the market. The reason why they pulled it off the market, they laid it out. They named a few stars that were abusing the drugs. We had a meeting with activists. Obviously, they claimed they just knew this was going on. We told them this has been going on for 10 years. How could you not know? But the one thing with this article, it was from a UK news release. They were dead on with what this was released. Because when we had the meeting with activists, basically verbatim, this is what activists told us. And that's what wound up in the papers. So either activists leaked it out or that news outlet had a great source. Over-the-counter cough services. Even though it's not controlled, a lot of kids are also abusing this because of the DXM in it. What they're doing is they're chugging it, robo-chugging it, and what it does, it gives a total dissociative effect just like ketamine.
Doesn't even taste good.
Yeah, but what happens is they wind up mixing it with Skittles, grape juice, you know, they kind of mask it and then they just chug it.
Oh my gosh.
The cocktails, the Holy Trinity, when we talk about the Trinity and the Holy Trinity, this is how they want these drugs when we talk about the drugs of concern. This is the way they want to abuse them. No therapeutic value for these drugs to ever be written in that combination. Heroin versus Oxycontin, oxycodone. Real easy. Heroin Schedule 1, no acceptable medical use in the United States. Oxycodone, Oxycontin Schedule 2, acceptable medical use in the United States. So, What's causing this big heroin epidemic? Here's why. You look at the circle of addiction, what happens is you'll have these drug seekers, they'll start off abusing hydrocodone. Depending on what region they're in, paying $2 to $10 as a Schedule 3, we're going to see what it averages as a Schedule 2. They build up a tolerance for it, need something stronger, transition to oxycodone. Now they're paying anywhere from about $15 to $35 a tablet. They build up even more of a higher tolerance, so they need something stronger. So they switch over to Oxycontin or Pan or Zohydro, extended release. Then what happens, depending on what region you're in the country, they're paying $140, $150 for an 80 milligram tablet. So you take on average, a person's got a 400 milligram a day habit using these opioids. And depending on where they live, because on the national average it's about $1 a milligram, depending on where you're at, it can be as high as $1.50, $1.60 milligrams. So now you're paying anywhere from $400 to $900, $1,000, $1,200 a day to feed your habit. So then what winds up happening? You can't afford it anymore because it's too expensive. Any city in the United States, you can go buy a bag of heroin for $10 or less. Just as strong, just as euphoric, the highest, just as intense, more intense, keeps you from withdrawals. That's the reason why we're seeing a heroin problem going on right now in the United States.
What do you mean backed up when you say it keeps you from withdrawals?
Withdrawal opiates, when you don't get them, you start going through withdrawals. You know, shades and everything else that comes along with it. Yeah. So it keeps you from going through withdrawals. This is why we're seeing an uptick in heroin abuse in the United States. No other reason. Because you have prescription opioid users going to heroin. So in the community, when you're thinking, oh, we got a heroin problem, we got to address our heroin problem, if your strategy isn't attacking the prescription drug problem, you're never going to address this heroin problem. Because you're feeding your opioids to heroin. You have to address this problem first. So you had the White House and the Attorney General talked about the epidemic that was going on. What I will also tell you too, and this is why I put this up here, this is not an epidemic. This is nothing new. You know, the problem that you have right now that's going on with heroin is because the faces of addiction have changed. That's why everybody's, using the chic word, we gotta address heroin abuse. When I say the faces of addiction, it just means that now you got people that are either, gym shorts and t-shirt or wearing a suit and all in between. That's why it's the chic word, people want to attack it. This problem has always been around. And ever since 2007 at DEA, we were telling the powers to be, if you don't address the prescription opioid problem, we're going to have a heroin problem in this country. And they didn't want to believe us because they kept saying, there's no studies out there backing up what you guys are saying. We don't need studies. We're out on the streets. We're dealing with it. We're seeing it. So what happened? September of 2013, the study came out where it looked at what was going on with the heroin problem. And what do you see? Since 2007, there was a spike in heroin abuse every year. Of course, now we're all geniuses over at DEA. But the problem is, you gotta listen to the people that are out there. And so now, everybody, what's the strategy can we put together, DEA? We want you on these committees, we want you on this. We want you to go out and speak to all these legislators and everything. It's real simple. Address your prescription opioid problem and you'll be able to address your heroin problem.
One question.
Yes, sir.
What was significant about 2006?
2006, when you had the spike there, does anybody know? You guys should know since you're from this Midwest region. Does anybody have an idea? Want me to tell you? Yeah. Remember back in 2006 when we had this rash of fentanyl overdoses? hit the Midwest, Ohio, Detroit, Chicago, and it turned out to be clandestine fentanyl that was manufactured out of Mexico.
Was that diet thing?
No.
What is it?
No, fentanyl is an actual opiate. It's a drug.
Oh, we don't know.
Yeah. Well, so that's what it was. So when you had that huge spike like that, what was going on is because, people that want this euphoric high, when you hear of a drug, wow, that's the bomb drug out there. It's killing people. Well, let me go try it. Real smart, right? So that's why that spike happened in 2006. Because people that weren't heroin users or were opioid users, when they heard of this killer heroin, well, let me go get a try.
Wow.
And it was because they're chasing that dragon. They're chasing that euphoric high. So when you hear that a drug is so good that it's killing people, it's not going to happen to me because I'm not opiate naive. I know how to use the drug. And they find you laying on the ground with a needle in your arm.
These people need a life.
That is their life. That's the problem. That is their life.
And the end of it, too.
This shows the age and racial makeup of what we're seeing with heroin abusers. Let's look at consumption. Kind of tie it all together. The International Narcotics Control Board released information on global consumption of the two main drugs. Hydrocodone, most prescribed drug in the United States. Oxycodone, most abused drug in the United States. And if you look at the global consumption, we in the United States consume 99% of all the world's hydrocodone. Huge appetite for drugs. And if you look at oxycodone, we consume 81% of the world's global production. Remember how we talked about at the beginning with IMS, 4 billion prescriptions just for 2012? We're waiting to see what comes out for 2013. Huge appetite for drugs we have.
Is that why now, too, is that a new law, too? I noticed at the hospital they won't write prescriptions for, painkillers anymore if I get in or something.
No, most hospitals, believe it or not, they usually don't write prescriptions. They write what we call our orders. And that way they get them filled that way. But no, what it is, a practitioner, first of all, they have to make sure that when they write a prescription that it's for a valid and legitimate person within their normal course of professional practice. And so what may happen sometimes is you may come in, not meaning you, but a person may come in as a drug seeker, and the practitioner realizes, because they've either ran the person through the PDMP, whatever state they're in, and they see that this person has seen 10 doctors in the last week.
So they can see that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If they access it. And that's why we as DEA, we tell you, if you have access to a prescription drug monitoring program, and what I can tell you, you guys here in Ohio have probably one of the best ones in the country. You guys in Kentucky, if the practitioners have access to it, use it. Because you're going to identify doctor shoppers and people that are just trying to get over on you. You're going to identify them immediately. Even if it's not real time, you're going to see that their past activity is showing, which you can develop something from.
So you basically, as a DE agent, have this. You can gather this information if you start seeing, Dr. A is really.
Here's what we can do. We can do everything because we're the government. No, I'm just kidding. But what do we wind up with? We have access. Remember how I showed you have to be a DEA registrant, and you have to have the DEA registration to legally handle controlled substances, and with the closed system of distribution. So with that closed system of distribution comes certain things with it. Like, when you're ordering drugs, when we're going out doing investigations, when we're setting quotas, so we can see it. So if you're a practitioner that's dispensing on site, and you're ordering drugs, we can see the whole downstream that when you order, how much you order, what drugs you order, and then we can use that by looking at other things. Yeah. Yes.
If when you had the totals of deaths from the opioids, are you counting the doctors that work with hospice patients when they're dying and prescribe?
No, these are unintentional drug overdose deaths. So that means they are out abusing drugs with no ideal. Like, I'm going to go out Friday night and me and you are going to abuse drugs, but I had no intention both of us were going to die. Yeah. That's why it says unintentional drug overdose.
Okay, the other question is, when you were talking about prescription drugs, that like there's one for every person in Ohio, did that include all kinds of drugs like thyroid medicine and osteoporosis and things like that?
Just the painkillers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just the painkillers.
So, like, I've never had a painkiller, so that means in that 100, somebody else is getting more than one.
Right.
Somebody's getting
You're
yours.
getting your share.
That's right. And you in Alabama and Tennessee and West Virginia, way more people are getting
Right. Because, I mean, there's a lot, I mean, I know me, my son now has them, but, you know,
right.
We don't have them, so that means somebody else has got our pill.
Yeah, that's right. That's what that means. So let's talk about neonatal syndrome real quick. This is a problem that is pretty much being caused because of all the abuse that's going on. And what winds up happening is, you think about back in the 80s, when you had like the crack babies that were born addicted to crack. Now we're having a problem because of this epidemic that we're in, that you're having babies that are born, opiate babies that are going through withdrawals. And you look at it, and first of all, this is the sad part, because you got to think about it. Again, these babies are our future. They're our future leaders, our next generation. And they're already being born addicted and having withdrawal problems. And if you look at it, you got one being born every hour in the United States. And the last time they were able to garner this information was from 2012. So they're in the process of trying to get updated information. When you think about that, that is a problem. Where we have that many kids that are born addicted and suffering through withdrawals. Because of everything that's going on. The other problem you have with this is the cost. It's costing us almost $750 million to address this issue. So you think about that. For every kid that's born, it's costing us $60,000 on average as a society to address that issue. And we don't know what the future is going to bring, because we all know that when there's problems like that, sometimes problems don't even occur or come to the surface 4 and 5 and 6 years later. But that's our next generation.
Well, when you think about it too, you know, they don't have a cause for autism right now, but the rates are increasing significantly as well. These rates are increasing. I know there's a lot of different theories, and but I just read an article where antidepressants were maybe being linked as well during pregnancy. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting that you're saying this, and those rates are increasing significantly.
Yes.
Having had a head injury, I do understand the effects of what that is, and things don't show up right away.
That's right.
It does take time, even at my age, you know, and it's a slow progression. So until you do interventions to get your brain back working again, which, you know, can be difficult to find, I can see where these kids, you know, it's going to show up.
That's right.
Makes sense.
How do these kids fare as they grow older?
Well, we don't know, because they just finally released this information in 2012. So now they're still doing follow-up information to address the issue and check the numbers. And see, that's the problem with a lot of times. They really do good, accurate, validated studies. The information is not going to come out till 3 or 4 years after the event. So, you know, that's the whole problem. So you're running 3 or 4 years behind, even though the information is current because it was released currently, it's still 3 years old. So you're always working on that, trying to see. And that's the problem right now. Like, I also sit on treatment committee that's ran out of the White House. And because one of the things that I would tell you as law enforcement, we are not going to arrest and incarcerate our way out of this problem. And I'm just telling you that as law enforcement. You have to have prevention, education, treatment, and enforcement, and they all have to work in a cooperative effort. That's how we're going to solve this problem. Now, granted, some people just need to go to jail. But it all has to be worked in a cooperative effort. And that's how we're going to be able to get this problem. And if you ask me, as based on my personal experience and my 25 years with DEA, the number one way to address this problem, if anybody would just ask me, is through education. You start getting these kids when they're in kindergarten, and you start telling them about it, making them aware of it, letting them know what the ills are, letting them know this is what can happen, this is how this can affect you, this is how this is going to have a direct effect on people you care about, as well as an indirect on people that you don't know, and you educate them that way, so when they get to the point where they have to make a decision, they're not at 12 years old starting their initiation into drug use by abusing these drugs. That's what I think how it's going to happen.
Would you say the DARE program is a good program? I mean, I hear some people, they're just using taxpayer money.
Here's what I would say. Any program that will get out and educate the American public is a good program. Because knowledge is power. If you don't know about something, how do you know how to handle it? But at least if you make people aware of it, that could be the difference for someone getting involved in this destructive behavior or not. Because as much as I go out, I'm more amazed that healthcare professionals, meaning doctors, are not aware of some of this stuff that's going on. That's what really surprises me. We're all a part of the problem, but I'm amazed how them as a group have been the less educated about this. And you know what? It may make sense. Because when they go through med school, they only get 4 hours of that type of training. Pharmacists are the subject matter experts on drug therapy. They know it better than anybody. So, and you know what the sad part is? We've tried to go into the medical schools and talk to these universities and say, look, let us address your doctors before they get out and start practicing and tell them about what this problem is that's going on, because if they don't know about it or they decide to compromise their integrity, they're going to be meeting us in a way they don't want to meet us. Basically all of them told us to go pound sand. We don't want you guys scaring our doctors before they get out there and practice. Really?
They must be getting a lot of money from the pharmaceuticals.
You know what? That may be the case, but when they wind up doing something they shouldn't do, they're going to run into us. So like I already told you, we're not going to wrest our way out of this problem. You have to use education and prevention as well as treatment to work this out. Give you an idea of what we're seeing in treatment right now. Most current information just came out September of this year. As you see, look at the number 2 drug that people are seeking treatment for. The psychotherapeutic pain relievers. That's where the problem is. Medicine cabinet access. We got to make sure we're locking up our meds at home and that we're making sure that no one has access to them. You look at the second bullet there, we talk about what 55% of the parents say that anyone can come to their house and access their medicine cabinet. I don't put up the flip side of that. If you ask them what percentage of parents say how many people can come to their house and access their alcohol, 2%. So they're locking up their alcohol more than they're locking up their controlled substances. Our take back, we just did our last one, September 27th of this year. The numbers for that are not out yet, but if you look at the previous ones we did since 2010, you see we collected over 4.1 million pounds of unwanted prescription drugs. So think that's what we stopped from hitting the black market.
What's sad is that all those drugs were paid for. All that money was spent to pay for those drugs.
In one way or another, yes.
Pharmaceuticals are happy.
Was the biggest
Pharmacists.
Right.
So that's all of us.
That's all of us. That's why I said that's all of us. Exactly right. What is costing us the effective prescription drug abuse? About $73 billion. Between lost wages, law enforcement costs, people not coming to work, that's what it's costing us as a society. If you ever need to report anything, this is how you can report it to us. You can reach out to DEA, call your local DEA office. If you don't want to call your local DEA office, you can call our RX abuse hotline. Or if you decide you don't want to do that, you can go on the internet, just go on our website, and you can punch in your information and someone will call you back. What I got up there, when I just put the numbers of how many submissions we received every fiscal year. We work on a fiscal year from October 1st to September 30th.
Oh.
Yeah. So as you see, we're right now in fiscal year 15 from October 1st.
I see.
So you start seeing what's coming in. These are the numbers as of October 23rd. Public awareness. And then we're done. This is to make you aware, not about everything that we talked about, but so that you can protect your loved ones. Here's what's happening. 2010, there was a scam that was going on where you had a group of individuals out of the Dominican Republic. They were calling people that were ordering drugs over the internet because it was illegal. They would use the names of real DEA employees because if you go on our DEA website, anybody that's anybody in DEA, their name is up there. They were calling these people saying, hey, you order drugs illegally over the internet. Now we're going to, if you don't pay us $5,000, you either Western Union it to us or MoneyGram to us, we're going to come out and arrest you. First of all, let me tell you, if any of you guys do anything wrong where DEA needs to come out and arrest you, we're not going to call you. We're going to show up about 6 in the morning and drag you out of bed because that's what we live for. It is what it is. But anyway, people don't know. They never met anyone from DEA. They get scared when you talk about it. And people were paying this. So if you look, we started keeping track of this since 2010 by trying to keep everything on one page. If you look for each fiscal year, you look at the number of calls we got that came in. If you look at the next number, that's what the extortionists tried to extort through all those calls. And the number in yellow is what these victims paid them.
Wow.
Pretty good job just sitting in the DER just making phone calls. Obviously, we indicted people on this in 2011 and also this year. But this ring is still going on because you see so far this fiscal year, since the 23rd, we've had 119 calls coming in and they tried to extort over 400,000 and so far 85 has been paid. Over the last 5 years, these extortions have collected millions of dollars. So make sure you tell your loved ones that if they get a call from someone claiming to be a DEA agent or any law enforcement, that they're going to come and arrest them, tell them whatever they do, don't pay the money. And then what they can do, they can go to our website. See where it's got on there? Either website you go, the main one or the Office of Diversion Control, you see where it says extortion scam alert. Because you see, we're pretty ingenious. We hear people extorting, we just call it the extortion scam. And you go on there. If you go on the main site, if you go on the Office of Diversion site, and you see a circle, all you got to do is click on it. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the scam. And then it'll put you, if you don't want to talk to anyone because you're so embarrassed because you sent someone $5,000, you can just fill it out on the internet. And someone will call you back within 8 hours and address this issue with you. So, let's just make sure we treat our prescription drugs like a loaded weapon. You wouldn't hand a loaded weapon to anyone and you wouldn't leave it out. Treat them as their loaded weapon. Because you know what? They are a loaded weapon because they can kill. Thank you. You guys had some good questions. You should have been here for more.
Are you familiar with Hazleton?
No.
That hospital?
No.
For drug addicts, and it's about 45 minutes from Minneapolis. Well, anyway, I have a relative that was there, drinking, drugs, and you name it. And it took a long time for her to make a decision to go.
Right.
Finally, the neighborhood supported the family. She went. So I thought medicine would be what they would give her. No. They are disciplined. She has come back home, a beautiful person, and it's all discipline. Her husband had to go with her. He said it was harder for him because to attend the classes so that they knew what was to be expected of her. But I just can't get over the miracle. But the minute that they talk about drugs, they'll say, no, we do not give her drugs. Discipline. We know what to do. And it just looks like a miracle.
And you know what? And it also is too that the person that goes there has to have the willpower and the hope and the willingness to accept that.
You were very good.
Thank you.
When I met you upstairs at the room, I said, that fellow has a personality.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Actually, it's more of a comment than a question. When you're talking about Vicodin and the other ones that are combination drugs that are prescribed, they're usually mixed with acetaminophen, which itself, yes, and in abusing those, they're abusing the acetaminophen too, which is very toxic to the liver.
Well, here's what I would tell you. That they are toxic to the liver, but it's a myth how toxic they are. Because we've had people that were abusing, that we've arrested, that have admitted to abusing 80 to 100 tablets a day. Wow. That were in combination product, and they didn't have not one problem with their liver.
Wow.
A lot of times when you have people that have problems with their liver, it's based on their genetic makeup.
Okay.
So we're insurance.
Any other questions?
Mailing.
Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to point out, I know we were talking before, if it's not happening to me, then, I don't want to know about it because until it does, I'll do something about it or learn about it or whatever the case may be. The trouble is that when they're looking for the money to pay for the drugs and when they're looking for the money to pay for the heroin, they're now breaking into my house. I may not know them, but they're breaking into my house.
And that's why you notice I said quality of life issues, that we have to make sure that everybody has good quality of life issues.
And that's, or they're driving their car on the road, you're driving your car when they are high, and that's it. And so we're all susceptible to the problems that are caused by this.
Either directly or indirectly, we are all affected by it. You are exactly right. Yes. Go ahead.
So just hearing reference to what drugs are gateway drugs, so alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, going up to prescription drugs. And so the question is, how prevalent is all this drug use with children? And I've talked with some policemen who are in schools in the greater Cleveland area, good schools, bad schools, and kids are using drugs everywhere, and they're very bold about it. They don't even care that the officers are there.
That's right. And that's the problem. Again, it goes back to the thought process of the teens and the attitudes that they have, as well as with the attitudes of the parents. And we're back again to the attitude of society that nobody wants to be told what to do. Everybody wants to do what they want to do, and they don't care because everybody feels entitled. And you know what? There are not going to be any repercussions for what I do. And until we go back to holding everybody accountable for their actions, treating people for what they do, and making them accountable for what they do, that's how we're going to solve all this problem. But the bottom line is, and I'm just telling you this from a law enforcement standpoint, from what I've seen throughout my career, it all starts at home. And I understand that some homes are better than others. There's no doubt about that. But if the parent doesn't care, think about it if you're a kid. Every kid wants to be loved, and they want discipline from their parent. They don't want their parent to be their friend. They want their parent to show that they love them and that they care about them. And that's where it all starts. And a lot of the parents nowadays are teaching their kids to be entitled. That it's all about me. I don't care about anybody else. Well, you know what the problem they have is, though? When they start getting involved in this type of destructive behavior, they're going to run into somebody that's either going to be us, that's going to take away their freedom because of something that they did, or somebody's going to kill them over something that they did. And that's the problem right now with society that I would tell you, that I think is the problem that's going on. People are so used to doing things, figuring there will never be any repercussions about it. And that's a problem. When you feel that there's no repercussions, you feel that you can do whatever you want to do. When you realize there's repercussions, it stops and makes you think. Repercussions is the best self-control anyone can ever have. Because when you know you're going to pay for what you did in a negative manner, that's the self-control. And right now, that's what we're not seeing.
I'm just sharing because I think it's important when you have personal experience to share what that is.
Yes.
I agree totally with what you said. My nephew is actually going to be coming home from 3 months out in California because of prescription drugs, cocaine, marijuana, alcohol. And my sister is raising his 3 children, co-parenting with the other parent, the mom, who was in treatment for 2 years and had another baby while she was in treatment. Now, we come from a very middle-class family. You wouldn't have thought this would have ever happened, but she did. She became his friend. Now what she's learning is that the boundaries are so important. She was getting counseling too as well, so that she knows when he returns home, so she doesn't spend the rest of her life supporting him, to empower him instead. And I'm so proud of him because he made the choice to go. Whatever the reason was, I don't, it's a long road for him. It's just the beginning. But going back to Hazleton, and their program out there was about accountability and teaching that you have certain obligations in life and that, responsibilities. And the good news is if he can go back the rest of his life if he needs to, if it's that kind of a program. So we were fortunate to find that. But it does. It touches people, and I love my nephew. He's 31 years old. And I'm excited about his new life for him because he had no freedom. The ironic thing is when you're in addiction, you think you're free and you're doing all these things, but it's quite the opposite. You have no choice in the life. That's right. And you're not free at all.
And the other thing with something you said is a lot of times as a society that you can't look down on people that have these problems. And that's one of the things that society, I think, sometimes forget. You can't put a negative connotation on people that have this problem because you don't know what tomorrow brings. You don't know what the future brings, meaning the next minute. And you have to put yourself in these people's shoes. Is, okay, I work for DEA and I'm out there fighting this, but I also have to make sure that I can be out there fighting this, and I have a son, and he can wind up getting mixed up in this, knowing that everything that I do. And so you have to have a human side to this. And you educate people, you make them aware of it, but that's another thing we have to get out of in society, looking down on people. Oh, this person's got a drug problem, let's just write them off. Let's just write off his family. Because you know what? With prescription drug abuse, no matter where I go, if I usually started off and goes, has anybody been affected by this? Either an immediate family member or someone they know or someone that's an extended, everybody raises their hand. Well, that's should be a sign that, you know what, we got to do something to address this problem. If everybody raised their hand, how can we think it's not a problem?
And I know, I think, well, the township trustees in Clarendon, they try to get that house, you know, so when people get out of rehab, they have somewhere to go so they're not just back on the streets getting in their same old problem. And I know, like, a lot of people, I know they tried to get it in charter, and they were like, oh, we don't want it because something's going to happen.
There you go.
Yeah, and then I'm like, well, we live on Clarendon, and I live in the middle of a, you know, it's a two-way street. There's like 16 houses and 20 houses. We were getting robbed constantly, and they come back and back again. So even though we might not want that in our township or whatever, we're affected by it, because if you're worried somebody's knocking on your door at 9:30 and is going to rob you, and they come back and they're running around the neighborhood, I mean, it's affecting you whether you're on the drugs or your kid's on the drugs, or
because it's affecting your quality of life.
Right. Because now you have to worry about, you know, what's going on top of that in your neighborhood.
And that's what we need society to understand. And that's why we go out and we try and educate and make sure everybody's aware of it, because we all have to take a role in this to address the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.